My parents sold the house, which Grandpa left for me without telling me. They faked my signature and claimed I was too unstable to manage it. But they overlooked the one clause Grandpa hid, and it blew everything wide open. I, 32M, found out about the house sale on a day that started like any other, but ended with a storm inside me. The house, left to me by Grandpa, was supposed to be my anchor, my legacy. It was the place where every corner held a memory, every creak in the floor whispered stories of the past. But my parents had sold it without a word, without a hint of the betrayal that was unfolding behind my back. They claimed I was too unstable to manage it, and worse, they faked my signature to make it official. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off, that there was more beneath the surface. The weight of betrayal pressed down as I pieced together their deception, each detail sharper than the last. The discovery came through a neighbor's casual mention of seeing moving trucks at Grandpa's old place. My blood ran cold as I realized what had happened. The house that held my childhood summers, the workshop where Grandpa taught me to fix things with my hands, the garden where we planted vegetables together, all of it was gone. When I confronted my parents, they acted like they were doing me a favor. They told me I wasn't ready for such responsibility, that my recent struggles with anxiety made me unfit to handle property management. The way they said it, so matter-of-factly, like they were discussing the weather, made my stomach turn. After the initial shock, I started questioning every interaction, every word my parents had said about my supposed instability. Their calm demeanor felt rehearsed, like actors hiding a secret. I remembered the times they dismissed my concerns, labeling me irrational without reason. It was clear they wanted control, not my well-being. I replayed conversations in my mind, searching for clues, for moments where their true intentions slipped through. The more I thought about it, the more I realized how carefully they had planned this, how they had underestimated my resolve. The paperwork they showed me looked legitimate at first glance. My signature was there, or what appeared to be my signature. But something felt wrong about the whole situation. The timing was suspicious. They had moved forward with the sale during a period when I was dealing with work stress and had been less communicative with the family. They had used my temporary withdrawal as evidence of my instability, painting a picture of someone who couldn't be trusted with important decisions. I spent the next few days in a haze, trying to process what had happened. The house wasn't just property to me. It represented everything Grandpa had worked for, everything he had wanted to pass down to future generations. He had specifically chosen me as the inheritor, not my parents, and there had to be a reason for that. The old man was sharp until the very end, and he wouldn't have made such a decision lightly. The more I dug, the clearer it became that my parents had underestimated me. They thought labeling me unstable would silence any questions, but I was far from broken. Late nights were spent sifting through old papers, calls to lawyers, and quiet confrontations with my own doubts. Then, I stumbled upon the clause Grandpa had hidden, a clause that turned the whole game on its head. It stated that any sale without my explicit consent would be null and void, and that I had the right to reclaim the property. My heart raced as I realized they had overlooked this, blinded by their greed or arrogance. I started planning my move carefully, knowing that exposing them would shake the family to its core. Every step was calculated, every word measured, as I prepared to turn the tables. The tension built with each passing day, the silence between us thick with unspoken truths. I knew the confrontation would come, and when it did, it would change everything. The clause was buried deep in the will, written in Grandpa's careful handwriting as an addendum. It was clear he had anticipated something like this might happen. The language was specific and legally binding. Any attempt to sell the property without the direct, witnessed consent of the primary beneficiary would render the sale invalid. More importantly, it gave me the right to reclaim the property and seek damages for any losses incurred. I couldn't help but smile as I read it. Grandpa had always been 3 steps ahead of everyone else, and even in death, he was still protecting what mattered most. The clause also mentioned that if such a situation arose, I would have full authority to pursue legal action against anyone who had participated in the fraudulent sale, including family members. Update 1. With the clause in hand, I felt a surge of hope and determination. I reached out to a trusted lawyer, explaining the situation without revealing too much. The lawyer confirmed the clause's power and advised me on the best course of action. I started gathering evidence of their deception, preparing for the inevitable confrontation. Each piece of evidence was a nail in the coffin of their lies, and I felt a strange mix of satisfaction and sadness. The lawyer was amazed by the thoroughness of Grandpa's planning. He explained that such clauses were rare, but completely enforceable when properly documented. We began building a case that would not only void the sale, but also expose the signature forgery. The lawyer advised me to document everything, every conversation, every piece of paperwork, every interaction with my parents from this point forward. I started paying closer attention to my parents' behavior. They seemed nervous whenever the topic of the house came up, quickly changing the subject or making excuses to leave the room. Their guilt was becoming more obvious by the day, and I could see the cracks in their facade starting to show. The hardest part was pretending everything was normal during family gatherings. Sitting across from them at dinner, knowing what they had done, was almost unbearable. But I knew I had to be patient, to gather all the evidence I needed before making my move. Every smile they gave me felt like another betrayal, every casual conversation a reminder of their deception. Update 2. The confrontation was tense but controlled. I laid out the facts calmly, letting the claws speak louder than any argument. Their faces betrayed their guilt, but no words could undo the damage. I knew this was just the start of healing, but at least the truth was out. I spent countless nights reflecting on the betrayal, the fragile nature of trust, and the resilience needed to face such wounds. Each day brought new challenges, but also a clearer sense of self and purpose. The house was more than bricks and mortar. It was a symbol of endurance and rightful inheritance. I vowed to protect it, not just for me, but for the memory of Grandpa and the truth that could not be silenced. When I finally presented the evidence to my parents, the room fell silent. I had chosen a Sunday afternoon when we were all together, thinking it would be better to handle this as a family matter before involving the courts. I laid out copies of the original will, the hidden clause, and the evidence of the forged signature side by side on the dining table. My mother was the first to break. She started crying, admitting that they had been desperate for money due to some bad investments. My father remained stoic, but I could see the defeat in his eyes. They had gambled on my ignorance and lost spectacularly. They tried to justify their actions, claiming they were protecting me from the burden of property ownership. But their words rang hollow when faced with the evidence of their deception. The forged signature was particularly damning. They had practiced it multiple times, and I had found the practice sheets in my father's desk drawer. Update 3. Days turned into weeks as I wrestled with the storm inside me. The house was more than just property. It was a symbol of my grandfather's love and the history of my family. Every time I thought about the betrayal, a mix of anger and sadness churned within me. I questioned how those closest to me could turn their backs so easily. But beneath the anger was a resolve, a determination to reclaim not just the house, but my dignity and the truth. I kept reminding myself that this was about justice, about standing up against deceit and greed. The silence in the house was deafening, each room echoing with memories and the weight of unspoken words. I found myself reflecting on the fragile nature of trust, how easily it can be shattered and how hard it is to rebuild. Yet, in the midst of the pain, I discovered a strength I didn't know I had. This journey was changing me, teaching me about resilience and the importance of fighting for what is right. The legal process moved faster than I expected. The lawyer filed the necessary paperwork to void the sale, and within weeks, we had a court date. The buyers of the house were surprisingly understanding when they learned about the fraudulent sale. They had acted in good faith and were willing to cooperate with the legal proceedings to get their money back from my parents. My parents tried to negotiate, offering to pay me back over time, but the damage was done. Trust, once broken, couldn't be easily repaired with promises and payment plans. I realized that this wasn't just about the house anymore. It was about holding people accountable for their actions, even when those people were family. The court proceedings were swift and decisive. The judge was particularly harsh about the signature forgery, calling it a serious breach of trust that went beyond simple family disputes. My parents were ordered to pay restitution not only to me, but also to the buyers who had been caught in the middle of their deception. The day of reckoning arrived quietly, with no grand announcements or dramatic scenes. I presented the clause to my parents, watching the color drain from their faces as the truth settled in. They had gambled on my silence and lost. The house was mine, not just by law, but by the legacy Grandpa intended. But the victory was bittersweet. Trust, once broken, is hard to mend. I realized that reclaiming the house was only the beginning of a longer journey to rebuild what family meant. In the end, justice was served, but the scars of betrayal lingered, a reminder of the cost of greed and the strength it takes to stand up for what is rightfully yours. Standing in Grandpa's house again, with the keys finally in my rightful possession, I felt a complex mix of emotions. Victory, yes, but also profound sadness for what had been lost in the process. The house was exactly as I remembered it, but the family that had once filled it with laughter and love was forever changed. I walked through each room, remembering the stories Grandpa used to tell, the lessons he taught me about integrity and standing up for what's right. In a way, this whole ordeal had been his final lesson, that sometimes the people closest to you will test your resolve, and you must be strong enough to do what's right, even when it's painful. The relationship with my parents would never be the same, but I had learned something valuable about myself in the process. I was stronger than they had given me credit for, more resilient than even I had known. Grandpa's house wasn't just my inheritance. It was proof that some things are worth fighting for, no matter the cost.